Welcome back to mckilliplife. My name is Amber, and today I'm going to be in my yellow kitchen. Tonight's goal is to make dinner, which is going to be beef and broccoli with rice. Beef and broccoli is one of West's favorite dishes, and I think I might have made this one time a long time ago, but it's been a long time since I've made it. So I'm working with two recipes I haven't used before. I say two because on one of the recipes I like some of their flavorings, and so I'm sort of combining the two recipes. I'll have the two recipes linked below. But the goal is to do this in the Instapot. Well, I don't have an Instapot, it's a crock pot version of Instapot, but basically a pressure cooker. So I am going to be running laundry, and my washing machine and dryer are located in the kitchen. So today I will attempt to do a voiceover. We'll see how that goes. So enjoy watching, and I'll see you at the end. The first step is to measure out all the ingredients I needed for the recipe, which I completely forgot to film, as you can see them all laid out there in the background. Next, I'll be working on slicing the meat. The first step to any process like this is to go ahead and sharpen the knife so it doesn't take as long and it's more safe, especially when you're working with tough cuts of meat that this recipe calls for. It's good to cut the meat across the grain or perpendicular to the grain of the meat. So I'm doing that. They said to cut it in thin strips. So after eating this, I think I could have done it in thinner strips, but then again, it would have taken that much longer. The recipe also called for, I believe, flank steak, which we did not find. So I think this is like top round, but it turned out well. I like cutting off any large chunks of fat. So in my pressure cooker, the first thing to add is the cooking oil. They called for canola oil. What I had on hand was olive oil, and so I used that, and it worked out fine. And they said to go ahead and set the pressure cooker on saute mode. I tend to avoid saute mode because I've had it give me error messages about it being too hot when I went to cook. I went to actually do the pressure cooking, but it turned out fine this time. So the next step is to go ahead and brown all of the meat and all the sides. Here I am just trying to place the meat so there's some space in between it so it does brown and does less steaming. And they also said to do it in batches, and so that's what I did. And it took a bit of time, but I believe it did add some flavor to the dish. This was rather tedious, and I suppose it would have been even more tedious if I had cut the meat smaller. Once the meat was browned, I went ahead and took it out of the pot in order to start making the sauce. The first step in the sauce was to add the beef broth. Here I am just mixing it up, making sure my bouillon was well distributed. And this water was already a little bit hot from the kettle. And just make sure to get all the flavor. I'm adding a little bit of water to get all the goodness out of the bottom. Next, I'll be adding ginger, about 2 teaspoons worth. And then garlic, which is about 6 teaspoons. Brown sugar. Soy sauce, I actually put half the soy sauce they asked for, and I'm also using a lower sodium soy sauce. And finally, it's going to be sesame oil. I was interested to see if cutting this soy sauce down that by much would affect the flavor too much. If I figured if anybody wanted to add a little more salt or soy sauce on their dish at the table, then they can do it individually. But 3/4 of a cup of soy sauce seemed like a lot. Here I'm just stirring it in because I wanted the sugar to be melted before I put the meat back in. Now that the sugar is dissolved, we can go ahead and add the meat back in. and give it a mix to make sure the majority of it's submerged in the sauce. Go ahead and add my lid into the locking position and make sure it's set to non-venting. And for the settings, it's going to be manual pressure on high for 10 minutes. As the pressure cooker is going, I'll take this time to make the rice. The rice I had on hand was instant minute rice. It was brown rice. And I like to cut out the instructions and stick it into the container with my rice so I always know what I need to do. In this situation, I'm going to make basically the maximum, which would be 3 cups of instant rice to 3 cups of water. And you add it to the pot and you bring it all to a boil. Once it reaches a boil, then you go ahead and turn it down to a simmer with the lid on, and you let it go for 10 minutes. So it works really well when you're working with a pressure cooker recipe that's going for 10 minutes as well. Of course, the pressure cooker will be a little bit longer than that because of coming up to pressure and everything, but so will the rice with it coming up to temperature for boiling. The instructions don't say it, but I like adding a little bit of oil and a little bit of salt to the rice to give it some flavor. Fast forward and the pressure cooker is saying it's finished. So this recipe is a quick release, so while it's still warm, you've opened up the vent. I like covering it with a towel so it doesn't squirt and spray my cabinets or anything. Once it gets close to the end, I sort of peek to see if the bobber's gone down yet. And if it's not coming out full force anymore, I can take the rag off. Now that the bobber goes down, I can go ahead and take the lid off. Add in the cornstarch slurry. Give it a mix to make sure it doesn't clump up. It did a little bit on the spoon, but it's not a big deal. The majority of it worked in fine. But that'll help thicken the sauce. At this point, I decided to go ahead and taste the sauce to see how that using less soy sauce worked with it. And I thought it was fine. Like I said, I just placed the soy sauce on the table, so if people wanted to add some more to their dishes, they could. Next, it's adding in the broccoli. Give the ingredients a stir to try to get the sauce around the broccoli and such. You can't do it perfectly, but I feel like it makes an effort. The recipe said with fresh broccoli to cook it for 3 minutes, and then with frozen broccoli to cook it for 5. I read that as close it up and put it back on pressure for 5 minutes. And then after I did that, I looked at the recipe again and realized it just meant put it in there with a keep warm function for 3 to 5 minutes. So I ended up, after it had gone to high pressure for a minute, going and rescuing everything and opening it up early. The broccoli ended up being cooked fine. We'd like our broccoli on the softer side, so it worked out. So here we are with dinner, broccoli and rice, beef broccoli and rice. And taste test. I don't think the broccoli's too overcooked.
Tastes pretty good to me, nice and hot. And another wonderful meal by Amber.
Do you think it needs more soy sauce?
No.
Okay.
Enjoy.
So, we hope you learned something, or if nothing else, we kept you company. Have a good day.